Recently, I made a video talking about how much I love the smaller size MacBook Pro. Not only did I appreciate the compact size and expanded display over the old 13-inch model, but I also felt I wasn't missing out on much because I could spec it blow for blow against the bigger 16-inch laptop with exactly the same CPU, the same GPU, the same storage, and even the same amount of memory, which is something you absolutely could not do on those older Intel MacBook Pros. Good riddance. I'm glad Intel's gone. Thank you so much, Apple. Thank you for the Apple Silicon transition. I love these laptops so much. Whew. Sorry about that. Let me regain my composure. Now, I thought my size decision was going to be permanent. However, after spending a week with this brand new 16-inch M2 Max MacBook Pro, I'm starting to wonder, did I make a mistake? Is bigger truly better? Now, for most people, the performance of both machines are great and probably beyond what 90% of the market needs, and even the base model can meet the demands of 98% of the market interested in buying these laptops. So the first question you probably have has nothing to do with performance, but rather the form factor. Now, you clicked on a video about the 16-inch laptop and you want to know what it's like to use a bigger MacBook. And this is the biggest MacBook that Apple sells. And let me tell you, when I first opened it up, first took it out of the box, the first thing I thought when I saw this laptop is that this thing, it's a battleship. Like, look at this thing. It is massive. This thing is big and ready for war. A war full of Final Cut timelines and YouTube videos. Compared to my 14-inch, it feels and is thicker. It takes up much more space in my bag, and in some of my smaller bags, it doesn't even fit. Now, not only is the 16-inch physically larger, it also weighs you down quite a bit more. My 16-inch MacBook Pro weighs 4.8 pounds, which is 1.3 pounds heavier than the 14-inch model that I'm used to carrying around. Now, before you start typing away in the comments, do you even lift, bro? Yeah, I lift. Can't you tell? And also that added weight in combination with other things you carry in your bag can really start to add up. And while it's fine for like a quick venture to like a coffee shop or commuting back and forth to the office, I would be very hesitant to take this thing around all day with me on an adventure walking around like I might with my 14-inch model. Now, there's other factors you have to account for. The bigger size laptops means it's more awkward on smaller tables. If you frequent coffee shops like I do, that means it'll probably fit, but your coffee might not. And in more cramped spaces like an airplane, I doubt the 16-inch model would even fit on the tray table. Here's footage of my 14-inch on a plane, and look how cramped that already is. And if you're the type of person to use this on their couch while laying down, the 16-inch model, well, typing with it on your lap isn't impossible, but it's not as nice of an experience as using a smaller laptop. Even the charging brick this 16-inch model uses is a portability consideration because the one it comes with is massive. It's a full 140-watt brick. Sure, you can charge this thing with a lower wattage, smaller brick, but if you want fast charging, you're also tossing this into your bag. But to be fair, you might be able to leave the charging brick at home entirely for day trips. The battery life on this 16-inch model is much better than my 14-inch model. Now, to be fair to my 14-inch model, it is 18 months old at this point, and the battery health has fallen from its 100% mark since owning it. But there's no denying that the overall 16-inch MacBook Pro has much better battery life out of the gate. I didn't review the equivalent M2 Max 14-inch model this year, but the 16-inch feels like with a mixed workload, the battery is impossible to kill in a day. It's really insane. For example, there are times when I'm using the 16-inch model and I check the battery percentage, then I check it again 30 minutes later, and it hasn't dropped a single percentage point. There's also other benefits that this larger MacBook has that I am envious of as a 14-inch owner. After using what I thought was a generous screen size in the 14-inch model for over a year at this point, going to this 16-inch model feels like moving from a one-bedroom apartment to a house. Okay, maybe a townhouse, or at least a nice 2-bedroom apartment with 2 bathrooms. A guy can dream, right? Subscribe to the channel so I can afford a better condo. There's just so much extra space on this 16-inch display. You get so much extra screen real estate to move windows around. I could fit probably comfortably around 3 to 4 apps at once. And when you're full screening apps that have lots of different elements like tools, it gives you a more expansive workspace. I really like having that extra screen real estate too. And a lot of the pro apps I use, like Final Cut Pro, it allows me to see more information for my color grading, my video scopes, and a bigger timeline that is just easier to navigate and work in. I also enjoy watching video content on the bigger 16-inch display, blowing up a video and being immersed in that beautiful mini LED display makes it such a different experience compared to Apple's smaller laptops. It really feels like you're carrying around a portable TV, And there's a good chance the display might be the best one in your entire household. Like, it's that good. Now, the bigger size laptop also packs in even bigger speakers, and it can actually like fill a room with sound. Like, the bass on this, the clarity, it is really impressive, especially when you remember that this sound is coming from laptop speakers. The display was even great for playing a few games. Yes, you can actually get some decent gaming performance on this machine, which I'll talk about in just a second, but the speakers paired with that big display, with HDR enabled, made me want to reconsider everything about my 14-inch model. There used to be a term that I think a lot of people used to throw around. It used to be called entertainment laptops. I think this 16-inch MacBook Pro is the ultimate entertainment laptop. There's also some other small improvements for these newer models that I didn't really mention, like the better HDMI port. It does allow you to connect up to an 8K display. There's also Wi-Fi 6E, which this thing has. I do have Wi-Fi 6E at my house. All of that is great for the improvements, but again, they're pretty minor, and they require things that I think most people probably don't have in their households. Now, I mentioned at the start of this video that you can spec the 14 and 16-inch models exactly the same, and while that is true, we're starting to see what might be the performance ceiling on the smaller 14-inch model. The last time I reviewed these, there was a difference in performance thanks to the better cooling offered on the 16-inch model, and this time around, it seems that that better cooling is only giving the lead to the 16-inch model even more. That's because the M2 architecture runs hotter than the original M1 series, which focuses more on gaining performance by increasing the CPU and GPU frequency on the cores and by adding more of those power-hungry cores to boot, thus taking more energy to run and also increasing the heat in these MacBooks. And that made me actually kind of fearful of the future of the smaller 14-inch model, because these chips are getting beefier and hotter in this model. That means that maybe going down the line, performance on the 16-inch model is only going to get better and better, while the 14-inch is going to be limited thermally and kind of fall behind. The silver lining here, though, is that for the most part, my experience on the 16-inch model feels kind of identical to my older 14-inch. That's because most of what I do on a laptop for daily use, like browsing the web, taking notes, writing scripts, listening to music, watching YouTube, the things you do every day, and you probably should spend less time on those things and more time on productive things. These machines handle all of that just extremely well. Like, that is not hitting the performance cores. They're likely maybe even doing a little bit better by gaining the extra 2 efficiency cores in the new M2 Pro and M2 Max architecture. So day to day, there might be like a slight bit more responsiveness. Like, apps on the M2, on all the M2 machines I've used, feel like they load just like a hair bit second faster than they do on the M1. But again, it is not like a night and day difference. Like, you really have to look for it. You really have to notice it. And once you're in those apps and everything, the responsiveness just feels exactly the same. And sure, there are speed advantages in apps like Final Cut Pro, where there's shorter export times compared to the M1 Max, and render times are faster. And while it benchmarks faster, and yes, it is faster, the differences for my personal workload, and again, this isn't going to be the same for everyone's workload. If you do more intensive stuff, you might see a difference. But for me, I'm usually exporting around 10-minute 4K video clips for YouTube in H.264. And for me, between my 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro and this new 16-inch M2 Max MacBook Pro, I only saved about 4 seconds in export times. Not a big deal. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is just slightly better. There are big gains here, and I have noticed that the most when testing out gaming on this M2 Max MacBook Pro. The extra GPU cores, along with the better cooling system, let me play games on higher settings with less performance drops than on my 14-inch model. In particular, Resident Evil Village, which is optimized for Apple Silicon, looks beautiful on this 16-inch model, and it runs like a dream. If you want to know more about my gaming experience on the 16-inch model, check out my video here. But in short, the GPU in the M2 Max is a big jump in GPU performance from the M1 Max, and an even bigger jump than the M1 Max in the 14-inch MacBook Pro, which kind of had its GPU cores running at a lower frequency. And it got me thinking. It really got me thinking. Did I make a mistake by not ordering a personal 16-inch M2 Max MacBook Pro with the specs I wanted and deciding previously that I was going to stay with my 14-inch M1 Max? Well, the answer might have been yes, if I was facing any performance ceilings, because with the heat that the M2 Max puts out, especially during intensive GPU usage, I'm not going to lie to you, if I had to buy a new laptop today, there would be good reasons to go for the 16-inch based purely on performance headroom, with that M2 Max chip in the bigger enclosure. However, the fact that I'm not feeling the pressure right now in performance with my 14-inch M1 Max means that upgrading for me, it just isn't necessary. And while in the future, I might have been scared about the idea of even more performance gaps between the 14 and 16-inch model, as Apple gets into their future M3 chip and beyond, we are expecting them to make more energy-efficient 3nm chips. So from now on, the hotter running M2 Max chips might be kind of an anomaly rather than the norm going forward. So did I make a mistake by not upgrading to the 16-inch M2 Max model? And I think that answer is obviously no. Like I said before, I am not hitting performance ceilings on my current 14-inch model, which means I still have, it's gonna be fine for the next year of using it as I wait for M3, and then maybe I will consider upgrading. Now, are these 16-inch or maybe even the 14-inch M2 Pro and M2 Max laptops worth it? Yeah, of course they are. They're better, they have better CPU performance, they have better GPU performance, they're a little bit faster, they come with some nice little add-ons and stuff like that. They're definitely worth it, right? So if you're a new buyer and you're coming from like an older Intel Mac, hey, it's a good time to buy a new laptop. They just got upgraded. You're gonna get a faster laptop than I have, right? You're gonna have a faster laptop than Greg's Gadgets. You're gonna be able to brag for a nice year while I wait for my M3. So good on you. And when it comes to size, even though there may be like slight performance differences based on cooling, even though you can spec them out the same, just remember, it is personal preference. The 16-inch model isn't defaultly better. There's pros and cons to owning a big laptop like this. The 14-inch isn't defaultly better. There's pros and cons to owning a smaller laptop like that. Just make sure you make the best possible choice for yourself, just like the right choice after making it this far into the video. It's to subscribe. You made it this far. Like, if you're still watching, I'm sure there's like 2% of you that are still watching. Just subscribe and like the video. And maybe, just maybe, I'll catch you in the next one. Sounds like a good deal to me. Sounds like a good deal to me. Sounds like a good deal to me. Sounds like a good deal to me.